Hey everyone, it's Alex Bashir with Intuito Group. So happy that you've joined today to talk about a critical conversation coming up for our organizations. And this is our Prep 22-23, the Manager's Guide to Performance Reviews. We're going to be talking today about some of the practical ways, the preparation, and the best practices to making sure you crush this critical conversation. In our organizations right now, we have a lot of first-time managers. We have a lot of new managers to our culture, or we have a lot of managers that are doing things different for the first time, perhaps delivering it through virtual means. And so to have an opportunity to look back and make sure we're prepared is going to make all the difference in this conversation. These conversations are critical because they can either be a push or pull factor as a manager to retaining and energizing your team members. But there are a couple of needs for why we have to prepare and why we have to look at information like this. It's critical because we need to have confidence going into this conversation. A manager that is lacking confidence can be easily seen and felt across the table. So by looking over this information and preparing accordingly, you can make sure that you go in there with a great posture, fully confident, and then sending that energy over to those that you're reviewing. We also have a need to retain employees. This is a very competitive labor market right now, and every employee matters. This is a great opportunity to show them their value and to help solidify their involvement with the organization beyond this review. There's also a need for behavioral change. You're going to have to either integrate new behaviors or you're going to have to help somebody change their behavior. So making sure that you start this conversation, that you're articulate, that you're able to lay out a very good sort of case for why you view their performance the way you do is going to be very important in helping them change or integrate new behaviors. And lastly, this is an opportunity to build momentum. You want to start things in the new year going off strong. So this is an opportunity to sit down, look at ways to support, and generate a good feeling and good sense of momentum going into your year. Let's take a look. I always say it's important to have three goals when you're going into a performance review. One goal to synergize, one to energize, and one to finalize. Your goal to synergize is about building rapport and trust, connecting with your team members, finding out about their experience, the highs, the lows, how they currently view their role, and its value to the organization. Energizing is about a goal about having a shared understanding and shared commitment, a shared understanding of their performance, and then a commitment to do something about it. This can be difficult, but if you can come to an agreement, both sides are very clear. This is a very energizing sort of feeling when both people feel they're on the same page and they're able to go about their work because they are focused. And the last is to finalize. We want to make sure that we're looking ahead, that we have very concrete, defined steps. We're talking about how the manager can collaborate with them, set them up for success, support them with the tools that they need. And then we also want to have opportunity to brainstorm and think creatively about what the possibilities are. Those that fail to prepare, prepare to fail. I absolutely love this quote, and nothing is more true in this world to me. It is all about preparation. And so we want to make sure you hit sort of three areas of preparation before you get into your performance review. We want to make sure that we review, reflect, and refine. When we talk about review, this is about looking at past performance reviews. What was covered? What was said? What have you seen since? What was the tone you have taken with them before? We want everything to be natural and consistent, not a time for surprises. The job description. Oftentimes the role gets filled and we never go back and look at this, but this document is a resource to help us separate at times the person from the problem. We look at the role and what it needs to succeed. What are the expectations, the responsibilities? Knowing this information intimately before you get into that performance review is going to pay you back in the end. Next, we need to reflect in two ways. We need to reflect on our own mindset. Currently, how are we viewing things? How do we view our own role in the organization? How are we viewing our team? How are we sort of viewing our team members? What's the mindset we have about them individually, collectively, and sort of ourselves in this moment? We also want to reflect on any biases we may be bringing into this performance review. Now, there's a lot of great resources out there that list all the different biases one can have, and we all do bring biases into a conversation. For instance, something like recency bias. where recent events are shaping your perspective and your outlook, and we're not looking at the big picture. So we want to make sure that we are looking at our biases and just becoming generally aware of the potentiality of them. This in turn will help us guard off leaning into them and setting up our conversation to have more conflict than we intended. Our last point is to refine. This is where we want to prepare by making sure we have specific defined goals for each team member. Now, teams are very dynamic and you have people that are all different stages within your organization. So we want to make sure we have goals that are relative to their own sort of positioning within the organization. For somebody who's new and there hasn't been a whole lot of availability to see their performance, setting goals to maybe get them more settled or assimilated into the sort of behaviors and culture might be a good goal. For somebody who's kind of going a little bit below average, maybe setting up more consistent one-on-ones or one-on-ones that aren't so far apart to stay on top of things and make sure they have everything they need to be successful. Perhaps you have a very high achiever and you may feel like, I don't even know that they should be telling me how I should be improving my performance. That's okay. High performers also need guidance as well. And having the discussion with them about possible mentorship opportunities or how they can become involved in more training initiatives, sharing their experience and their knowledge with their coworkers. These are all great goals for that individual. But as we know, preparation is not only about ourselves, it's about helping other people prepare. And how do we set up our team members for success in this moment? This is a very emotional time for everybody at the table. So anything we can do to lower the temperature is actually going to contribute to a more successful conversation and outcome here. So in your communications, typically done by email, you want to make sure you have a couple of different elements in there. First is you want to set the tone. Setting the tone about this being an opportunity. We will be diving into your specific performance, but also we're going to be setting ourselves up for success and what to do going forward. Then you want to set them up with how they should reflect and how they should collect together their thoughts on the different topics they'll be discussing. So the first is their experience of their work year. This is not about their performance. This is about the bigger picture on what were the highs, what were the lows, what was your experience like? How do you feel about your role? How do you feel it adds value to the larger organization? Then we want to talk about their performance, but we don't want to phrase it in sort of, what have you done well? What have you not done so well? If we use how have you done well? How have you not done well? Now we'll get the what, but then there's also going to be a little bit more of a description. So now we can sort of look at it for certain components and go ahead and lift up and elevate components that are really good in contributing to success. And then we can look at some elements and then see, okay, maybe this is where we need to change things. And then we also want to know about what they have learned. What have they soaked in? Who have they soaked it in from? What was their best way of learning? What did they appreciate most? Those sorts of areas. The last area of questions we want them to reflect on is not about them or their performance, but it's about preparing for what's ahead and looking at how you can help them as well. So what can you do better what can I do better to help your success? What questions do you have about the coming year? This is an important one. Where's your mind go when you think about the coming year? And then also, what sort of development opportunities do you see for yourself on the horizon? Get them thinking and taking ownership of their own growth and development. This is a very important step that we often miss in performance reviews, is giving that power back to the individual and saying, I need to know from you where your interests are, and then I can support you in that way. All right, let's get into the flow chart. Here's an 8-step flow. It's a process that's going to help you execute the task and minimize any sort of mistakes or conflicts that might come up. So first, again, always set the tone. We want this to be short and sweet and also be a reference to the email. Again, this is an opportunity. We're going to discuss your performance and we're going to talk about how we can set you up for success going forward. Then we want to go ahead and start with them. We don't want to start talking right off. We want to put them at ease. Let them share a little bit about their experience. Let them tell you about the highs. Let them tell you about the lows. You want to follow this up with the next step of asking the right questions. These are questions that are open-ended, that sort of show you are listening to their experience. I'd like to hear more about that. Please tell me more. How did you come to that decision? How do you think we got to the success? Letting them talk more. What this is doing is it's also buying you time to understand context. How is this person coming to meeting? What is their perspective on things? Where is their attention really being placed? The more you can get them talking, the more information and input you'll receive to have a better conversation for the rest of it. Now, we also want to make sure when you ask questions that you ask for examples for them to define exactly what they mean. Press them a little bit respectively to do these things. Then we go to real feedback. And I say real because there should be no surprises when you're giving feedback. There should be no gotcha comments. It's got to be consistent with the way you've delivered feedback before. So a respectful tone in a very sort of natural sort of way. We want to make sure that we're giving positive feedback as much as possible, if not more positive than negative, if we can. So making sure that we reference prior performance reviews. What was discussed? What have we seen since? A lot of times I use the model SBI, situation, behavior, impact. What was the situation we experienced? What were the behaviors that were seen? And what were the consequences individually and collectively that this brought about? That's a great way to formulate and really design a good feedback. Now, the fifth step is probably the most important, reaching agreement. This is where it gets really challenging because we're looking for congruency on this individual's performance, and that doesn't always happen. A lot of times, there isn't a common understanding of somebody's performance being one way or the other. But it's important that you come away from there with that common understanding, or no change will be able to happen. This is why preparation matters, is that you don't want to be caught coming to this part of the conversation without having done your homework and knowing exactly not only where they've been and where they are, but where you want to take them as well. So the preparation is going to really be leveraged in this point. And this is really where you need to leverage all your communication skills. Everything you've learned, all the knowledge, all the practice that you've done, it's going to come in right about this time because you're going to be tested in ways that you haven't. Do I know the personality type of the person I'm working with? They can speak in the language of the listener. Have I really heard where their needs are at? Or do I have a really good understanding and I have really good evidence to back why I'm saying what I'm saying? After you've gone through that step, now it's time to be a little bit more visionary, and let's start moving the momentum away and start creating some energy for the future. This is where you're going to have to be a bit more of a visionary leader. This is where you're going to want to talk about any sort of big initiatives that are coming or big plans that might be discussed within context that you're allowed to. This is also a great point to ask the 3 questions that a lot of business leaders do. This is, what's one thing I should continue to do, start to do, and stop doing? This is a great time to add that in there because, again, it's telling them how you can support them and building that momentum in for what we're going to do coming out of here. The next even takes an even lighter note and says, let's get just a little creative here, a little innovative, and let's start exploring your needs. What opportunities are you looking to develop? What new departments have an interesting idea or you're curious about? Or what new areas of business are you researching in this moment? And how can I support you in that way? We really want to explore and not set anything concrete in stone. It really is a brainstorming session. And what you'll come out of is to your last step here. And it's very important to lay out the next steps in a summary. Where will they be able to see the summarization of this conversation? Are you sending it in an email? Will it be in an LMS system? How can they review it and access the information? You also want to make sure you get out of there with 2 important dates set, 2 meetings. One is the follow-up goal setting meeting where you're going to take a lot of the things you discussed. After reflection is go and nail down some hard to find steps and action items to do it. You're also going to want to come out of it with a career planning meeting. It's very important for this meeting to be separate from your goal setting meeting because this meeting needs to be really focused on them, their wants and needs for their own future, the mobility they want, how they see their career progressing. So making sure you set up those 2 meetings as well as summarizing what you've just discussed is going to be the perfect way to close this performance review. Now, lastly, I'll say that you want to remind yourself, especially if you're giving multiple performance reviews, to remind yourself my last is as good as my first. To make sure you bring the same energy that you brought with your first review to your last review because they need it and deserve it just as much as the first person. All right, we ran down performance reviews in under 15 minutes. You got this. I know you do. If you like this, please subscribe to our channel. Tell us more stuff that you want to hear in under 15 minutes or connect with us via LinkedIn or TikTok @BizAthlete. Have a great day. Go lead.